Greetings, family. This is Kyle Dixon here for another post for Women's History Appreciation Month. And the woman that I choose to talk about today is somewhat of a Renaissance woman, pretty much. Very much a huge proponent of civil rights, and definitely she doesn't get enough credit. And that is Miss Ida B. Wells. Yes. So, Ida B. Wells was born in 1862, born in Holly Springs, Mississippi. She was born to enslaved parents. Her father was like a mason, dealing with masonry. Her mother was a cook. They met on one of their sharecroppers' properties. And right after slavery ended, after the Civil War, 1865, her mother and her father made sure that the children went to school. Her father was a Republican. Both her parents were Republicans, but he joined a group that was basically in support of the Union Army. And through that group of Republicans, radical Republicans actually, he was on the board of Shaw University. And Shaw ended up being Rust College in Holly Springs, Mississippi. So as a young child, Ida attended those classes at Shaw, and they said that she would often have not disruptions, but she would have discussions with her white professors and have basically like disagreements. So even then, at that young age, she was very much a person very opinionated and sticking to her sides of what an argument should be, or I guess what they should be learning. But unfortunately, as a kid, when she was visiting one of her grandparents, like I think it's 1878, yellow fever broke out all through the South, and her parents, unfortunately, were victims of the yellow fever outbreak, and one of her younger siblings, I think a brother, because she was one of 8, she was the youngest. So, you know, stricken with grief, she would want to go back ASAP when she got the notice, but her family wouldn't let her because they want to make sure that she'd be okay and wouldn't contact the disease as well. So her aunts and whatnot would advise her to send her other brothers and sisters into adoption, and she wouldn't allow it. So at the age of 16, she actually took the teacher certification test by making herself look older, and she passed on the first try. So because she was able to work and teach, she was the main breadwinner for her family, for her siblings. And she would work during the day at elementary schools and come home at night and help take care of her. Now, while she was doing that, her maternal grandmother and her aunt were looking after her brothers and sisters. So in reference to that, unfortunately, her grandmother and her aunt passed, and she had no choice but to move in with her aunt in Memphis. And she would basically like commute back and forth from Memphis, area like called Woodstock, I believe. And she would do work in the Memphis school system during the day, and then, you know, of course, take care of her siblings at night. So she would take the train in and out of Memphis and going places. So there's a famous case where she basically bought her first class ticket on the train, and the conductor asked her to move for some white patrons. She wouldn't move. Right? They wanted to sit in the back. She said, "I paid my ticket. I'm not moving." It took 3 men to move her from her seat. And now she's about 5'1", 5'2" woman, very petite, like 110, 120 pounds. So I mean, you know, that just shows you the will of this woman. And there's an account that she might have actually even bit one of the guys. But she filed suit as soon as they got to the next stop. She filed suit, got a lawyer, won the case, but unfortunately they overturned it. And she ended up having to pay a total of $500, $500 for the lawyer and $200 for the court fees. So, you know, that's what actually started her getting into journalism, just the injustices of African Americans going on during this time. And eventually she was a part of and co-founded this free paper by Reverend, I forget the man's name, but basically she was like the co-founder of the paper, and she ended up being co-editor of the paper, the Free Headlight. And because of her speaking out against discrimination, and not only discrimination in the South, but also discrimination in the school systems in the South, specifically Memphis, she was barred from basically pursuing the rest of her teaching career, and that's what got into journalism, so she started doing that full time. And through there, she was writing about, of course, the injustice in the South. She was touring and writing and whatnot. And another incident happened, which also gave her life another turn of events. One of these colleagues, one of dear friends of hers, were murdered by a white mob. And one of those men was named Thomas Moss. And Thomas Moss had owned the People's Grocery Store in Memphis, and there was a white grocery owner store down the street from his that was in direct competition, and his store was very popular. And apparently, some fight broke out in the front of his store with a black child and a white child, and then the white store owner jumped in because apparently the black child was winning, and then Thomas and his fellow co-workers, the two men, William Stewart and McDowell, McDowell, Stewart and McDowell, jumped in, and so it was this big incident, brouhaha, and they were all three arrested. And this black militia came to the jail because, again, during this time frame, you're talking, I think it's 1892 now, black men were known to go in jail, and white mobs were known to lynch them. So the black militia went to make sure that they weren't lynched. The sheriff told them that they weren't going to be rest assured. They were called the Riflemen. And, they left, and then a white mob came later on, drugged them out of the jail, and basically killed them all, shot them all, unfortunately. So Ida was very close to Thomas Moss. She was godson to one of his siblings. So, I mean, this changed her trajectory as far as going into like anti-lynching laws. And even when she was writing the paper closed down because a white mob had ransacked her main office while she was away, and basically left a notice that whoever is writing these papers, if they come back, we're going to lynch them too. So she ended up not coming back to Memphis and ended up moving to Chicago, where she met her husband, Ferdinand Barnett, who was the co-creator of the Conservator, and they even ended up having 4 children. They ended up starting an organization for black men to advance in like financial literacy, housing, and education. So they were steady, like helping the community, finding solutions to problems in the community, and also with the lynching, she started getting into doing research. There was a women's group that actually donated money, $500 for her, paid her to do research, to support her research in lynchings, because she found out like average about 100 lynchings per year, and she found out 1/3 of them were dealing with white female and black male companionship, whether it be sexual assault or accusatory rape, or just in the company of a white woman. And she noted that some of the white women were the initiators of it and criticized them highly. And she also created a journal in reference to lynchings, and it has a number of research from 1862 to 1865. So she was very much so a proponent of like doing the research and also highlighting the injustices and the violence against black people during this time. And that was something that wasn't necessarily cataloged. So her work was very, very, very important during this time. And now think about this too. She is around the time of Frederick Douglass, and she was known to criticize her fellow abolitionists as well, one meaning Frederick Douglass. And I'm sure she did it out of love, but she criticized Frederick Douglass, whereas Frederick Douglass was known to say, hey, well, if you do some work for the Negro, we appreciate it, even though more can be done, but we appreciate to have to work. And Ida B was like, no. We want the full capable rights of Negroes here in this country. We have fought, bled, and died, and we want all the rights. So she was not one to be silent during oppression or during discrimination in any forms. And even she got involved later on in her life. She got involved in the suffrage movement. There's one incident where she was supposed to march in the back of the women's suffrage march on Washington, D.C. in, I believe, 1913. And she had none of that. She got and went up to the front of the line and walked in a parade. So this just gives you a little bit of indicator of just her tenacity and her willpower and her determination and her intelligence as far as being able to articulate these things, not just for the white audiences and injustices, but for the blacks all across the nation that were maybe unaware of a lot of the prevalent violence in these areas. So Ida B. Wells Barnett, all right, was very much a pioneer, a trailblazer, a freedom fighter. So I just wanted to give enough time, and this is definitely not enough time, but I want to give at least some time to her legacy and her spirit. And I encourage you all to do further research on her. And again, thank you for your time. I have more posts coming soon. Please leave your comments if you have any. God bless. Peace.